My son secretly sold the classic car my late husband spent 20 years restoring, just so he could take his wife on a luxury trip to Paris. I thought the car was gone forever, but then the owner of the dealership called me and told me something I never expected, that the car was in his possession, that my husband had left something hidden inside it meant only for me, and that the truth about my son's wife was darker than I ever imagined. That phone call changed everything, and it was only the beginning of the story. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. I woke up early, like I always do, and went straight to the kitchen to make my coffee. Everything in the house felt normal at first, the same quiet morning I was used to, but something started to bother me before I even finished my first sip. I could feel that tight feeling in my chest, the kind that shows up when something is off, even if you don't know what yet. I walked to the hallway window and saw the garage door open. That door was never open. I told myself maybe I forgot to close it the night before, but I knew I hadn't. I went outside, still in my slippers, and the air felt heavier than usual. When I reached the garage, I stopped at the entrance and just stared. The spot where the car always sat was empty. At first, my brain tried to pretend maybe I was looking in the wrong place, as if the car could be somewhere else, but that old thing never moved. It had been parked there for years, like a part of the floor. And just like that, without warning, I knew something was wrong, and it wasn't a simple mistake. I walked farther inside, hoping maybe it was some kind of misunderstanding, but the silence in that garage felt too loud. The workbench was exactly how my husband had left it before he died. Every wrench lined up, every small part stored in labeled boxes only he understood. I used to tease him about being too organized, saying nobody would ever notice if a single screw went missing. But now that neatness felt like a memory trapped in time. The smell of oil and metal was still there, the same smell I lived with for 20 years of marriage, a smell I used to complain about, but now it felt like the last thing connecting me to him. I put my hand on the empty floor where the car had been, like touching the space could somehow explain what happened. I didn't cry, not at first. I just felt something collapse inside me, like a shelf breaking in a silent room. That car wasn't just an object. It was the thing he worked on every Sunday morning while humming songs off-key. It was the last project he ever finished before the hospital, and now it was gone. I stood there for so long that I didn't even hear the front door open. My son walked into the garage slowly, like someone entering after a disaster, not wanting to make noise. He didn't ask me anything, didn't act surprised, like he already knew what I was seeing. That made my heart beat even harder. I turned to him, and he wouldn't even look at me. His shoulders were tense, and he kept rubbing his hands together the way he does when he's nervous. I asked him where the car was, but I already had the answer before he opened his mouth. He said it fast, like ripping off a bandage, that he had sold the car. Sold. Not moved. Not borrowed. Sold. Like it was nothing. I stared at him, waiting for some kind of joke to follow, something that would undo the words. But nothing came. He said he needed the money. He said it like that. Short, simple, cold. He finally looked at me and told me the rest. He needed the money for a trip to Paris with some friends. A trip. A vacation. I blinked slow, trying to understand how someone could give away 20 years of memories for a plane ticket and hotel room. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just stared at him, feeling like I didn't know who I was looking at anymore. This was the same boy who used to crawl under the car with his dad, holding a flashlight, handing him tools, pretending he understood every single repair. I waited for him to say he regretted it, that he'd fix it, that the car was still close enough to bring back, but he only said, "I thought you wouldn't mind." That sentence hurt more than anything. It meant he never really understood what the car meant, not to him, not to his father, and definitely not to me. I walked past him without speaking, because if I opened my mouth, I felt like everything inside me would come out at once. Anger, sadness, disappointment, all of it messy and loud. I went back inside the house and sat at the table where my coffee was now cold. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument. I could hear him walking around, maybe trying to come up with more excuses, but I didn't want to hear any of them. I kept thinking about the day my husband first brought that car home, rusty and falling apart, saying one day, it would shine again. I thought about all the afternoons he spent polishing it, fixing little things nobody else would even notice. I thought about the last time he opened the garage, already thin and tired, just to sit in the driver's seat for a few minutes like he wanted to say goodbye. Losing that car felt like losing him all over again, but this time, someone I loved was the one who took it away. I stayed at that table a long time, not moving, not talking, just letting everything hit me. I didn't cry loud or break anything or yell like in the movies. The pain didn't explode. It sank. It went quiet, like a deep bruise under the skin. My son eventually left the house without another word, maybe because he didn't know what to say, or maybe because he didn't want to face what he had done. I didn't stop him. I didn't ask him to stay. I just let the silence fill the rooms. The house felt even emptier than before, like the missing car had taken something bigger with it. But while I sat there, something inside me didn't disappear. It shifted. It started to wake up in a way I wasn't expecting. I wasn't sure if it was anger or strength or something in between, but it felt like a door opening inside me. My pain turned into silence, but inside me, something began to change. The next day, still trying to accept what Brian had done, I received a call from a stranger. I was in the kitchen, staring at the same cup of coffee I had reheated twice and still couldn't drink, when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, because I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone, but something made me pick it up. The man on the other end spoke calmly, but his voice had a kind of certainty that immediately caught my attention. He said he had Dennis's car and that I needed to go to a dealership as soon as possible. At first, I thought it was a scam, maybe someone trying to take advantage of the situation, but the way he mentioned my husband's name made something in me stop. Nobody outside the family called him Dennis. Everyone else had always said Mr. Collins, or that man with the old car. I asked who he was, and before he even finished speaking, I recognized the voice. It took me a second to remember where, and then it hit me. It was the man who had spoken at Dennis's funeral, the one who thanked him for helping him years ago. I hadn't seen him since that day, but his voice never changed. I stood there holding the phone, trying to understand what was happening. The man didn't sound nervous or confused. He sounded like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He said he wasn't calling to cause trouble, and that he thought I deserved to know the truth before the car ended up in someone else's hands forever. I felt a mix of confusion, fear, and hope that I didn't trust yet. I asked him how he got the car, and he said he bought it directly when Brian sold it. He said he paid full price without negotiating because he already knew what the car meant. He said my son had no idea, and that was why he let it go so easily. Hearing that made my stomach twist because it confirmed something I didn't want to admit. Brian hadn't just made a mistake. He truly didn't care about what the car represented. The man then repeated that I needed to come in person and that there was something inside the car meant only for me. That sentence didn't make sense at first, but it stuck in my head like a loose thread I had to pull. I grabbed my keys and drove there without thinking twice. I didn't change clothes, didn't fix my hair, didn't leave a note. I just left. The whole drive felt longer than it really was because my mind wouldn't stop spinning. My heart was beating fast, and every red light made me feel like I was wasting time. I kept wondering if this was some kind of trick or if I was being foolish for believing a voice on the phone. But then I remembered the way he spoke at the funeral, the way he talked about Dennis like he was more than just a business partner. I didn't know the full story then because Dennis never told me everything about his past. He was private, not secretive, just someone who didn't brag about the good he did. I parked in front of the dealership, but before getting out, I had to sit for a moment and breathe. I looked around, convincing myself I wasn't walking into something dangerous. The place looked normal, too normal for something this strange. I finally walked inside with my hands slightly shaking. The man was waiting for me near the service desk. He looked older than I remembered, maybe because grief had changed how I saw people. He smiled when he saw me, not a happy smile, but a respectful one. We shook hands, and he introduced himself again, even though he knew I already remembered him. He didn't waste time. He said Dennis had helped him start the dealership years ago when he was broke and had no credit. He said my husband believed in him before anyone else did, and because of that, he became the owner of the business I was standing in. I didn't know any of this. Dennis never mentioned it, not even once. I felt embarrassed that I hadn't known, like there were parts of my husband's life that I never got to see. The man said that when Brian tried to sell the car, he knew something was wrong because Dennis never would have let it go unless it was for a good reason. That was why he bought it instantly. Not for the car, but to protect it. Then he told me the part that made my chest tighten. He said Dennis told him, years before he died, that if anything ever happened to him, there was something inside the car that was meant only for me, not for his son, not for anyone else. He didn't say what it was, only that I would understand once I found it. Hearing that felt like being pulled back in time, like Dennis was still here, still planning something, still talking to me from a distance. I felt tears build up, but I didn't let them fall. I asked if the car was safe, and he nodded. He said it was in the back, untouched, exactly how it left my garage. I followed him, every step feeling heavier than the last. Part of me was scared of what I would find, and part of me was desperate to see something familiar again, something Dennis left behind on purpose. When we reached the car, everything around me faded. It looked exactly the same. Not a scratch out of place, not a fingerprint on the paint. I put my hand on the door and felt the same memory I'd felt 100 times before. Sunday mornings, tools on the floor, Dennis wiping sweat from his forehead, smiling like a kid working on his first toy. For a moment, it felt like he might walk in and pick up a wrench again. The man stayed quiet, giving me space, and I was grateful for that. I opened the door and looked inside, feeling like I was opening a time capsule. I didn't know what I was supposed to find yet, but I knew it was real. I knew this moment wasn't just about a missing car. It was about something else Dennis had been trying to tell me long before he was gone. When I saw the car again, I felt my world change once more. That reunion wasn't a coincidence. Alone with the car, I found the secret compartment behind the radio, exactly the way the man had instructed me. I sat in the driver's seat and kept my hands steady, even though they were shaking inside. I slid my fingers along the trim, pressed the loose edge he described, and the panel popped forward with a soft click. Behind it, wrapped in brown tape, was a flat bundle. I pulled it out slowly and set it on my lap. I looked around the quiet bay to make sure no one was watching, then peeled the tape back. Inside was a thin metal box, the kind Dennis used to keep fuses in when he organized the garage. I opened it and saw an envelope, a rubber-banded stack of papers, and a small key on a tag. My breath shortened. I knew Dennis's way of doing things, and this looked exactly like him. I touched the envelope first, feeling the weight of it, like a message waiting for me. I closed my eyes, counted to 3, and told myself to be brave. Then I took out the envelope, held it close, and decided to start with the letter. I broke the seal and slid out a sheet covered in Dennis's handwriting. The moment I saw the letters, clean and careful, my throat tightened. He wrote like he spoke when something mattered. Short lines, clear words. "If you're reading this," it began. I didn't get the chance to say everything. He told me to breathe, to read to the end, and not to call anyone until I finished. He said he had looked into Vanessa months before he got sick because small things did not add up. Receipts that did not match her stories. Photos with dates that clashed with what she told Brian. Different emails on different forms. He wrote that he had checked public records and found other names tied to the same face. He said he had hired a friend to verify what he feared. Vanessa had used false identities, moved from city to city, and left men ruined. Some lost savings, some lost houses, some lost the trust of their children. He said I would want to argue with the facts because I love Brian and because I want to believe the best. He asked me to believe him and stay safe. I set the letter aside and reached for the stack of papers. The rubber band snapped and the pile spread across the seat. On top were folders with tabs, names, dates, places. Inside each folder were copies of emails, bank slips, and screenshots. There were photos of Vanessa with different hair, different glasses, different jobs listed under different names. Sometimes she was a volunteer, sometimes a consultant, sometimes a nurse's aide. She always stood close to men who looked proud to be next to her. In the notes, Dennis had written comments in the margins. Same jacket, same ring, same birthmark. He had circled phone numbers that showed up again and again. There were statements from an assisted living home where an old man lost gift money after meeting a nice visitor. There was a church bulletin where donations spiked, then stopped. There was a man who sold a motorcycle fast and cheap, then reported fraud a month later. Every trail seemed to bend back toward the same woman, only the name changed. I felt sick, not because I doubted Dennis, but because I could picture Brian defending her. I could hear his voice saying I was wrong again. Under the papers was another page from Dennis, clipped to a list of names. He wrote that Vanessa worked fast once she had trust. She kept her story simple and made the other person fill in the blanks. He warned me that Brian would defend her even when faced with proof, because loyalty can look like love when you are young. He asked me not to confront her alone. He told me to speak to a lawyer first, then to the friend who helped him gather records. Both numbers were on the sheet. There was also a plan. Copy everything, store one set somewhere safe, and use calm words if I had to talk to Brian. No shouting, no threats, just the facts, one at a time. He suggested starting with the things Brian could check himself, like dates, public filings, and phone records. He told me to expect calls from unknown numbers and to save every message. He said if the car left the house without my say, the man at the dealership would make sure it found me. That was why he chose the car as the hiding place. It was the only thing he trusted to reach me. I picked up the key and read the tag. It had a bank name, a branch address, and a box number. Under the stack, I found a second, shorter note. Dennis wrote that the key belonged to a safe deposit box with documents in my name and funds set aside for me. He had moved investments into accounts I could access. He said he wanted to make sure I would never have to depend on anyone who might hurt me. He reminded me that I know how to read statements and that I should ask the branch manager for the sealed file. He listed the last 4 digits of an account and told me to memorize them. He wrote that I should not tell Brian about the box until I felt safe. He said it was not a test of love. It was a lock on a door, eyes filled with tears. I felt relief, shock, and anger mixing together. Relief because he had thought of me. Shock because he had carried this alone. Anger because someone had pushed us to this point. I pressed the key into my palm and promised I would follow his steps, one by one. I gathered everything back into the box and looked at the car again. I wiped the dashboard with my sleeve, like I was saying thank you to something that carried his plan. I thought about Brian and the fight that might be coming. I pictured Vanessa acting calm, asking why I was attacking her, trying to turn Brian against me. I did not want a scene. I listed steps in my head. Make copies here. Go home quietly. Call the lawyer number on the sheet. Set an appointment at the bank. Save every file in 2 places. Tell Brian only what I can prove. Ask questions he can check himself. If he needs space, give it, but keep the door open. I told myself not to argue about feelings, only facts. I told myself to breathe, rest if I could. I placed the key in my pocket, held the letter to my chest, and closed the compartment. When I shut the door, I felt steady for the first time in days. I would not rush, and I would not panic. Today, with tears in my eyes, I understood my husband was still protecting me, even after death, and now it was my turn to act. I contacted the men Dennis mentioned in the documents and listened to their devastating stories. I didn't know what to expect before calling them, but I thought maybe 1 or 2 of them would sound uncertain, or maybe say things that didn't fully match. Instead, every single one of them had a story that fit the exact same pattern. I spent the whole morning at the kitchen table with the files spread out in front of me, the phone on speaker, a notebook beside me. The first man was in his 70s. His voice was weak but steady, and he remembered every detail. He said Vanessa showed up in his life through a church event, helped him with errands, acted like she cared about him, and slowly made him depend on her. She convinced him to sell a car he loved and then emptied part of his savings. He never heard from her again. The second man had lost part of his retirement money after she told him she wanted to start a business together. The third had been married, just like Brian, and said his wife left him after she realized he had signed papers that put their shared house under Vanessa's temporary control. Every call felt like listening to my son's future if I stayed silent. Even though the stories were painful, every single person thanked me for calling. Most of them said they never got justice because Vanessa always used a new name, a new town, a new reason to disappear. One man even said he blamed himself for years because he thought he was just stupid. Hearing that broke me a little because I knew Brian might feel the same soon. Before I finished the last call, I looked at the stack of proof again. Photos, documents, messages, passports under different names. I realized Dennis hadn't been paranoid or suspicious for no reason. He had done real research, step by step, checking facts, confirming every clue, waiting for the right moment to warn me. And now that moment was mine. When I gathered the folders and placed everything into a single box, I didn't feel nervous anymore. I felt clear. I knew this was going to hurt Brian, but I also knew keeping quiet would hurt him much more in the long run. I took a deep breath, closed the lid, and said out loud, "Okay, it's time." I didn't want to give Vanessa time to prepare or twist the story. When he opened the door, he looked surprised, but not happy or upset, just annoyed, like I was interrupting something. I asked if we could talk alone. He said Vanessa was out, so I walked inside. I placed the box on the coffee table and told him he needed to sit down. He rolled his eyes, already assuming I was there to argue or talk about the car again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't blame him. I just opened the box, took out the letter from Dennis, and handed it to him. He didn't want to read it at first. He stared at the handwriting, then set it down like it burned. I told him to read it completely before reacting. He didn't. He stood up and started pacing, shaking his head, saying I was doing this because I didn't like Vanessa, because I never accepted her, because I was trying to control him. I let him talk until he ran out of excuses. Then I showed him the first folder with the photos of Vanessa under 3 different names. He looked for 2 seconds and pushed it away. He said they were edited, fake, lies. I kept my voice calm and said, "Then prove they're fake. Look them up yourself. Call the phone numbers, search the records. Do it. But don't pretend you don't see what's in front of you." He said she loved him, that she would never do something like that I always tried to ruin his happiness. He slammed the folder shut and walked out the front door, leaving it open behind him. For a moment, I thought maybe I had made things worse. The house was silent, and I sat there alone with the box, wondering if I should go after him. But then I remembered Dennis's instructions. Don't chase, don't yell, let truth work. So I left everything there on the table and went home. The silence in my house felt heavy, but not hopeless. I knew the truth was louder than my voice. I kept my phone close, waiting, not sure if he would call in hours or in days. I didn't cry this time. I just sat still and waited for the moment when shock would turn into clarity, the same way it had for me. It happened sooner than I expected. Hours later, when it was already dark outside, my phone rang. It was Brian. He wasn't yelling anymore. He wasn't angry. He was crying. His words came out fast and broken. He told me he asked Vanessa about the documents, about the names, about the places she lived. At first, she pretended not to understand. Then she got defensive, then aggressive, just like the men on the phone had said. When he kept asking questions, she finally exploded, told him it was none of his business, and tried to blame him for not trusting her. Then, when he wouldn't stop, she gave up pretending. She told him he was as easy to fool as all the others. She packed a small suitcase in front of him, went to the bedroom, took cash he didn't even know she had stored, and walked out the door without looking back. She left him with the same last sentence she probably used on every man before him: "You'll survive." When he finished talking, he went quiet, and for the first time since this started, he didn't sound angry at me. He sounded empty. I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't remind him of the warnings. I just listened. He said he felt stupid, betrayed, embarrassed, and alone. He said he couldn't believe how fast everything fell apart. I told him it wasn't his fault, because people like her choose their victims carefully. They don't pick weak people. They pick trusting people. They pick good people. And I reminded him that Dennis never blamed him either. He only wanted to protect him before it was too late. Brian didn't speak for a while. I could hear him breathing like someone who had been punched in the chest. Before we ended the call, he asked me if I still had the documents, because he wanted to look at them again. Really look, this time. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. The truth had finally reached him, just like Dennis planned. He was destroyed, but now he finally saw who had truly been by his side and who had been lying to him. With the help of an investigator and the police, we tracked Vanessa down at the airport. Everything happened fast, but not fast enough to feel unreal. The investigator had been working quietly for days, using the documents Dennis left and the places Vanessa had been seen last. Once the police confirmed she had used a fake ID to book a flight, they moved into action. I wasn't supposed to go, but I needed to be there, even if it meant standing far away. Brian came with me, though he barely spoke the whole drive. He looked tired, older, like the last few days had aged him more than the last few years. We waited in an unmarked car across from the terminal entrance, while officers inside tracked her through security cameras. The investigator pointed at the screen on his tablet and said, "That's her." She was pushing 2 suitcases and wearing sunglasses, acting calm, like she had done this before. The sight of her made something cold settle in my stomach. She looked like she was going on vacation, not escaping with stolen money. I held my breath without meaning to, waiting for the moment the officers would move in. We followed in silence as the investigator guided us through side entrances and service halls until we reached a hallway that looked into the boarding area through a glass wall. The police told us to stay back, not because they didn't trust us, but because they didn't want Vanessa to see us and panic too soon. We watched from behind the glass, trying not to draw attention. I remember thinking she looked smaller than I expected. She checked her phone, looked around, then slowly moved toward the boarding gate. The undercover officers blended in like travelers, and I only recognized them because I had been warned who they were. One stood up from a chair, another pretended to buy something at a kiosk, and a third walked toward her with a clipboard like an airport employee. For a moment, I wondered if she would see it coming, if she would sense it, if she would look over her shoulder and know everything was over. But she didn't. She thought she was winning. She thought she was getting away. The moment the first officer showed his badge, Vanessa froze for just a second, then tried to run. She didn't scream or fight like in a movie. She moved fast, dropped one suitcase, and tried to shove through a crowd. But the officers were faster. One grabbed her by the arm, another blocked her path, and she was on the floor within seconds. She kept yelling she didn't do anything, that it was a mistake, that they'd be sued. When they opened the suitcase she left behind, stacks of money were visible under a layer of clothes. In the other bag, they found fake IDs, burner phones, and a passport with another name and another life already waiting. Watching it felt unreal, like seeing the inside of a nightmare from the outside. The investigator looked at me and nodded, as if saying, "This is the proof the world can't deny." Brian stared at the ground, unable to watch for long. His hands were shaking. He kept swallowing hard, like he was fighting the urge to throw up or cry. When the officers finally handcuffed Vanessa and lifted her up, she looked around fast, searching for someone. And then she saw us. Her eyes stopped on me first, and something inside them changed. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked furious. She leaned forward against the officers holding her and shouted, "You should have died when he did. You ruined everything." Her voice echoed through the hallway, even though we weren't close. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The words stung, but not because I believed them, because it confirmed everything Dennis had warned me about. There was never love, never loyalty, only strategy. She would have drained Brian the same way she drained everyone else and then walked away without blinking. After she was escorted out, more officers arrived with printed warrants from other states. Her path of crimes had finally caught up with her. The investigator turned to Brian and said, "You saved more people than you'll ever know just by exposing her." Brian didn't look proud. He looked broken. In the weeks that followed, the legal system moved faster than we expected. Once Vanessa was booked, victims from other states came forward. A prosecutor called me personally to say her case was now tied to multiple financial fraud charges, elder abuse, and identity theft. The sentence came months later, 12 years in prison. No probation, no chance of early release. When we heard the news, Brian didn't celebrate. He just sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, and said, "12 years won't fix what she did." I didn't argue. I just put a hand on his shoulder and let him feel what he needed to feel. That night, he asked if he could stay at my house for a while, just until he figured things out. He said he couldn't stand being in the house they shared. He packed a small bag and moved back into his old room. Not as a child, but as someone trying to rebuild. Eventually, he started therapy. He went twice a week, sometimes 3. He didn't come home saying everything was better. He just came home lighter each time, like the weight wasn't glued to him anymore. The house became quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet from before. It wasn't the silence of loss or confusion. It was the silence of healing. Some mornings we sat together without talking, drinking coffee, not needing to explain anything. Other days, he helped me fix things around the house, small repairs that Dennis used to do, and I could see how much it meant to him just to be useful again. The box of documents Dennis left was still in my room, stored safely inside the closet. I didn't reopen it often, but knowing it was there gave me strength. I had done everything he asked. I followed the steps. I protected what he wanted protected. And even though I wished he were here to see the ending, I felt him in every decision I made. I hadn't just reacted, I had acted. I had fought the way he prepared me to fight, and with everything finally settling, I allowed myself to breathe the kind of breath that doesn't hurt on the way out. Even in sadness, I felt relief. My husband had been right, and I had honored his trust. With time, my son recovered, and we found a new way to live together. It didn't happen fast or magically. There were weeks when he barely spoke, and others when he talked nonstop, trying to understand how he let someone like Vanessa into his life. I didn't push him. I let him take the lead. Little by little, he stopped blaming himself and started accepting that being fooled didn't make him weak. It made him human. We began sharing small routines again. Grocery shopping, fixing things around the house, even just watching a movie without saying much. It didn't feel like the past, but it felt solid, like something new we were building from the ground up. The house didn't feel angry anymore. It didn't feel broken. It felt like a place where both of us could breathe. One afternoon, I finally visited the bank and opened the safe deposit box Dennis had left. Inside were investment papers, stocks, bonds, everything organized in folders with my name on them. The manager explained they had grown a lot in value. Dennis had secured a future for me long before I knew I needed it. I cried in the parking lot because I realized he had been planning love, not just protection. I spent days going through the documents, learning how much money was really there. It wasn't just survival money. It was enough to live, to help, to rebuild. The first thing I did was something Dennis would have approved of. I used part of it to help the people Vanessa had hurt. I reached out to the men I had spoken to earlier and offered financial help for legal costs, repairs, and in some cases, basic stability. Some refused at first, saying they didn't want charity, but I explained this wasn't charity. It was taking something stolen and returning it to its original purpose. One man used it to get back the motorcycle he had been forced to sell. Another finally paid off debt that had followed him for years. One of them cried when I transferred the money, saying no one had ever cared what happened to him afterward. I didn't fix every life Vanessa touched, but I started balancing the damage the best I could, and doing that helped me heal too. I wasn't just surviving the past. I was choosing what to do with it. Then something happened that I didn't expect. Tom, Dennis's friend, the man from the dealership, called me and asked if I could stop by. I thought it was about paperwork or a signature I forgot. But when I arrived, I saw the Shelby parked outside, polished and shining like the day Dennis finished restoring it. Tom smiled and handed me the keys. He said the car never really belonged to him and that Dennis told him more than once that it only left our family temporarily. He said the car was meant to come back home when the time was right. I stood there, speechless. I walked around the car, touching the frame, the mirrors, the hood, like it was something alive. Sitting in the driver's seat, I could almost feel Dennis beside me, telling me where he hid every switch, every wire, every piece he rebuilt with his own hands. Getting the car back didn't undo the past, but it gave me something that felt like a full circle closing, something that belonged to us again, not to the part of life that broke us. When I drove it home, Brian was waiting outside. He didn't know I was bringing it back. The moment he saw it, he covered his mouth with his hand, like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He walked around it just like I did, touching the doors, leaning inside, smelling the same mix of leather and motor oil we grew up with. For the first time in a long time, he looked happy. Real happiness, not relief, not distraction. He asked if I was planning to sell it, and I told him no. I told him it was staying with us, and that I wanted to finish what Dennis had started. That was the day we decided to restore the smaller parts together. The ones Dennis never fully got around to. The dashboard trim, the seat stitching, the last details he wanted perfect. We opened Dennis's old notebook and followed the plans he had drawn. His handwriting guided us like he was still here, telling us what to do next, step by step. I wasn't just watching Brian heal, I was healing with him. Now, I'm learning to drive the car Dennis dreamed I would one day take on the road myself. He used to joke that I'd be the coolest old lady in town, cruising in a Shelby instead of a standard family car. The first time I started the engine, I was nervous, not because I was scared of driving it, but because it felt like holding something sacred. Brian sat in the passenger seat and gave directions, and we laughed when I stalled the engine the first 3 tries. Each time I shift gears, I think of Dennis's hands turning the same wheel, planning a future he didn't get to see, but one he still shaped anyway. The car doesn't feel like a machine. It feels like a message that kept traveling until it reached me. I don't look at it, and feel loss anymore. I look at it and feel connected. Like love didn't end when he died. It only moved into different places, waiting to be found. Every part I touch reminds me he left more than memories. He left a path, and I'm still walking on it. Each piece, each gear, reminds me that my husband's love is still alive, inside me. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe until next time.